Hello mga ka-Englishera, mga ka-Englishera! Welcome back to another learning session with me, Ma'am Cha. For today's session, ang i-discuss natin ay literary devices. So itong lesson na to ay ni-request ni Nomer Limano. So sabi niya, please ma'am, baka naman pwedeng literary devices. So una pa nga sabi niya, literary elements. So I suppose, ang tinutukoy niya ay literary devices kasi doon siya nag-comment sa lesson ko about elements of a short story. Yun din naman yung literary elements. So, Nomer Limano, shoutout sa'yo. Sana ay mapanood mo to. Let's start!
Literary devices. What are literary devices? Literary devices are techniques that writers use to create a special and pointed effect in their writing, to convey information or to help readers understand their writing on a deeper level. So why is it important to know the different literary devices and terms? First, being able to identify when different literary techniques are being used helps you understand the motivation behind the author's choices. Next, being able to identify literary devices can make a written work's overall meaning or purpose clearer to you. Lastly, literary techniques are important to know because they make text more interesting and more fun to read. Common literary devices. Let us first have alliteration. It is a series of words or phrases that all or almost all start with the same sound. These sounds are typically consonants to give more stress to that syllable. Example, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. So tandaan nyo lang, kapag sinabing alliteration, ito yung repetition ng consonant. So we have here, consonant P. Yan o, ilang beses siyang naulit. So, yan ay isang example ng alliteration. So, yung initial na consonant. Yun lang ang tatandaan ninyo for alliteration. Next. Anaphora is when a word or phrase is repeated at the beginning of multiple sentences throughout a piece of writing. It is used to emphasize the repeated phrase and evoke strong feelings in the audience. A famous example of anaphora is Winston Churchill's "We shall fight on the beaches" speech. Throughout this speech, he repeats the phrase "we shall fight," while listing numerous places where the British Army will continue battling during World War II. He did this to rally both troops and the British people and to give them confidence that they would still win the war. Pag sinabi nating anaphora, ito yung repetition ng word or phrase sa umpisa ng multiple sentences. Kagaya nga nitong example, ilang beses na inulit ni Winston Churchill yung phrase na "we shall fight" sa kanyang speech. Next is euphemism. Is when a more mild or indirect word or expression is used in place of another word or phrase that is considered harsh, blunt, vulgar, or unpleasant. Example, I'm so sorry but he didn't make it. The phrase "didn't make it" is more polite and less blunt way of saying that someone has died. Pag sinabi natin euphemism, pumipili tayo ng mga words na mas less vulgar, yung hindi masyadong vulgar na vulgar. Halimbawa, hindi mo sabihin na, ay, namatay na siya. Meron ka namang ibang mga words na mas magaan doon na pwede mong sabihin. Kagaya yung instead na sabihin mong died, pwede namang pass away. Para hindi naman masyadong harsh or hindi naman masyadong vulgar. So, yun yung euphemism. Yung pagpili ng mild or indirect word or expression in place sa isang word na harsh, blunt, or vulgar. The next literary device is flashback. It's an interruption in a narrative that depicts events that have already occurred, either before the present time or before the time at which the narration takes place. This device is often used to give reader more background information and details about specific characters, events, plot points, and so on. Pag sinabing flashback, parang throwback Thursday lang yan, wherein nagpapakita ka or nagkikwento ka ng mga nangyari na sa nakaraan. Example, most of the novel Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte is a flashback from the point of view of the housekeeper, Nellie Dean. As she engages in a conversation with a visitor named Blackwood, in this story, Nellie narrates Catherine Earnshaw's and Heathcliff's childhood, the pair's budding romance, and their tragic demise. So pag sinabing flashback, nagbibigay ka ng mga stories na nangyari na sa nakaraan o yung mga events na nangyari na sa nakaraan. Next is foreshadowing. Is when an author indirectly hints at, through things such as dialogue, description, or characters' actions, what's to come later on in the story. This device is often used to introduce tension to a narrative. Kung yung flashback ay yung mga events na nangyari sa nakaraan yung pinapakita, ang foreshadowing naman ay nagbibigay ng clue kung ano yung mangyayaring susunod sa story. Pero hindi naman siya spoiler na sasabihin agad kung ano yung mangyayari. Hints lang ito. Example, say you're reading a fictionalized account of Amelia Earhart. Before she embarks on her what we know to be unfortunate plane ride, a friend says to her, "Be safe, wouldn't want you getting lost or worse." So, yung line na yon ay isang example ng foreshadowing kasi nag-i-imply siya na something bad or worse will happen to Earhart. So, yun yung foreshadowing. Nagbibigay siya ng hint kung ano yung mangyari sa story in the future. Next is hyperbole. It's an exaggerated statement that's not meant to be taken literally by the reader. It is often used for comedic effect and or emphasis. Pag sinabing hyperbole, exaggerated to, na hindi naman talaga literal na mangyayari or gagawin. Example, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. Yung line na ito, hindi naman literal na siya ay kakain ng kabayo. So, exaggeration lang to, nagpapakita kung gaano siya kagutom. Ganun siya kagutom na sobrang gutom niya, kaya niyang kumain ng horse. Pero take note, hindi literal na kakain siya ng kabayo. For exaggeration lang ito, for comedic effect. Next is imagery. Is when an author describes a scene, thing, or idea so that it appeals to our senses. Taste, smell, sight, touch, or hearing. This device is often used to help the reader clearly visualize parts of the story by creating a strong mental picture. So kung na-imagine nyo yung minsan kapag nagbabasa ka, ay na-imagine mo kung ano yung itsura nung dinidescribe na lugar or kung ano yung itsura nung dinidescribe na tao. So yun yung imagery. Example. So our example is taken from William Wordsworth's famous poem, I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. So ito yung mga lines. When all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. So yung mga lines na to ay nagpapakita ng imagery kasi habang binabasa mo siya, dahil sa mga descriptions na binigay, nai-imagine mo kung ano ba yung itsura ng mga dinidescribe nung poets or nung nagsulat nung poem. Next is irony. Irony is when a statement is used to express an opposite meaning than the one literally expressed by it. So ito yung kabaliktaran. We have three types of irony: verbal, situational, and dramatic. Verbal is when someone says something but means the opposite, similar to sarcasm. Situational is when something happens that's the opposite of what was expected or intended to happen. Dramatic is when the audience is aware of the true intentions or outcomes while the characters are not. As a result, certain actions and or events take on different meanings for the audience than they do for the characters involved. Examples. Verbal irony. One example of this type of irony can be found in Edgar Allan Poe's The Cask of Amontillado. In this short story, a man named Montresor plans to get revenge on another man named Fortunato. As they toast, Montresor says, "And I, Fortunato, I drink to your long life." So ito ay isang irony kasi alam ng readers na si Montresor ay nagpaplanong patayin si Fortunato. Pero sa toast, sinabi niya na I drink to your long life. So napaka-ironic, di ba? Kabaliktaran. Next is situational irony. A girl wakes up late for school and quickly rushes to get there. As soon as she arrives, though, she realizes that it's Saturday and there is no school. Last, dramatic irony. In William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, Romeo commits suicide in order to be with Juliet. However, the audience, unlike poor Romeo, knows that Juliet is not actually dead, just asleep. So, napaka-ironic na si Romeo ay nagpakamatay para makasama niya si Juliet. Pero, alam naman ng audience na hindi talaga patay si Juliet. Natutulog lang siya. So, yun yung types of irony and the examples. Next, juxtaposition is the comparing and contrasting of two or more different, usually opposite ideas, characters, objects, etc. This literary device is often used to help create a clearer picture of the characteristics of one object or idea by comparing it with those of another. Example. One of the most famous literary examples of juxtaposition is the opening passage from Charles Dickens' novel, A Tale of Two Cities. Pansinin ninyo, dun sa first line pa lang may example na ng juxtaposition. Comparing and contrasting two opposite ideas. Ano-ano yung mga yon? We have the first one, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Best of times, worst of times. Comparing yung dalawang magka-opposite na ideas. Another, it was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. Another, it was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. Ang daming example. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. So, yan yung juxtaposition. Comparing and contrasting two or more different or opposite ideas, characters, and objects. Next is metaphor. Ito sobrang common na nito. Alam na siguro natin to. Compares two similar things by saying that one of them is the other. Direct comparison. Example, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east and Juliet is the sun. So sa example na to, ang metaphor natin is Juliet is the sun. Kino-compare si Juliet sa sun. So that is metaphor, direct comparison. Another common literary device is simile. Draws resemblance between two things by saying thing A is like thing B, or thing A is as adjective as thing B. Unlike a metaphor, a simile does not state that these things are the same, only that they are alike. As a result, it is probably the most common literary device in writing. You can almost always recognize a simile through the use of like or as. Kung metaphor, direct comparison na kagaya kanina, Juliet is the sun. Pag simile, magiging Juliet is like the sun. Another example, the ships were golden and huge as leviathans, their rails carved from ivory and horn. Ang simile natin dito ay ships were golden, huge as leviathans. So, gumamit siya dito ng as. Para ipakita na tayo ay gumamit ng simile. Next, ayan, common na common ulit. Onomatopoeia is a word or group of words that represents a sound and actually resembles or imitates the sound it stands for. It is often used for dramatic, realistic, or poetic effect. Examples, buzz, boom, chirp, creak, sizzle, zoom, etc. So, ito yung mga tick-tock sa clock, mga gumagamit ng sound. Ini-imitate niya yung sound na it stands for. Next, oxymoron is a combination of two words that together express a contradictory meaning. This device is often used for emphasis, for humor, to create tension, or to illustrate a paradox. Huwag malito sa juxtaposition at sa oxymoron. Ang juxtaposition is comparing and contrasting two or more different or opposite ideas. Comparing and contrasting. Dito naman, combining two words together that express contradicting meaning. Examples, deafening silence, organized chaos, cruelly kind, insanely logical. Kung mapapansin nyo, yung mga example natin ay magkaiba ng meaning or opposite sila ng meaning pero pinagsama sila. Kagaya nito na nakakabinging katahimikan. Tapos organized chaos. Organized as pinagsama mo sa chaos. So, oxymoron yun kasi nagko-combine ka ng two words na magkaiba ng meaning. Personification is when a non-human figure or other abstract concept or element is described as having human-like qualities or characteristics. So, ito yung pagbibigay mo ng human qualities sa objects. Example, the wind moaned, waving to me to come outside. So, alam naman natin na ang wind ay hindi tao, pero binigyan mo siya ng qualities ng human, kagaya ng moaned and waving. Last is repetition. Is when a word or phrase is written multiple times, usually for the purpose of emphasis. Ang repetition ay kadalasan ginagamit sa mga tula. Example, and love is love, is love, is love, is love, is love, is love, is love cannot be killed or swept aside. So, ilang beses inulit yung word na love. Huwag kayong malilito sa anaphora at sa repetition. Ang anaphora is the repetition of a word or phrase sa umpisa ng mga clauses. Pero ang repetition, kahit saan siyang part mapunta, as long as inulit siya, that is repetition. Tandaan na, uulitin ko. Ang anaphora ay repetition sa unahan ng mga clauses. Pero sa repetition, kahit saan siya mapunta. Alright, it's time for Brain Gym. Directions. Identify the literary device used in the following lines. The choices are written in the box. I'll give you 1 minute to answer the activity. You may start now. Okay, check your answers.
Alright, this is the end of our session. I hope ay natutunan ninyo yung ilan sa mga literary devices na aking diniscuss. So, kung meron kayong mga suggestions sa mga topics na gusto niyong pa-discuss, comment lang kayo. Pero syempre, hindi ko siya agad-agad ma-discuss, pero I will do my best na kahit naman medyo malate ay magawa ko pa rin. So, shout out ulit sa'yo, Nomer Limano. Salamat sa pag-request mo at sana ay mapanood mo to. Please mag-comment ka kung napanood mo. So, ayun lang. Thank you for watching. Enjoy learning. Keep learning. Like, share, subscribe. Bye!